Well, the console war is coming to a breaking point. Well, according to an intelligence marketing group looking into what are the trends for the next few years going to be looking like, saying here in an article written by VGC here, talking about saying the game industry will only have room for one non-Nintendo console next gen. Because if you don't know, Nintendo is just breaking records with the Switch. Actually, just recently surpassed a huge milestone. Because the Nintendo Switch bumps the PlayStation 2 down to third place for the highest selling console in units of all time. And it looks like it's up to Microsoft or Sony to fight for the scraps of what's left after Nintendo takes everything. This article here brings up some really interesting facts I wanted to talk about in this video and showcase like what the future of gaming really looks like for the next few years, and is it going to be better or worse for everybody. So if you guys like these type of videos, like, subscribe is always appreciated, but let's get right into those details. So DFC Intelligence just released a marketing report just giving like a next 5 years forecast of what is going to be the market for gaming going forward when it comes to mainly the consoles. And I mean, there's going to be a clear winner. It's Nintendo. They're going to continue to slay when it comes to anything, when it comes to sales, but it's really between Microsoft and Sony, and see like what the journey between these two consoles is looking like. And honestly, like for Microsoft, it's not looking too good. They predict that 2025 is going to be a big up year for gaming, especially with GTA 6 and also the rumor of the next Switch console being released in 2025. And this comes off of years of decline in gaming because, well, not as many people are at home playing video games because there's no longer a pandemic keeping people indoors. And the firm predicts the number of people worldwide who play video games will exceed 4 billion by 2027. That's nearly half the population of the world. But a lot of that is actually tied into mobile games. Like if you just play anything on your phone, technically that makes you a gamer. But like handheld on the go gaming is where people do a lot of their stuff, like they're commuting to work. They'll just play a little game before they get to work. That's where the Switch really comes in handy. I'm sorry, no pun intended, but now I'm actually kind of glad I made that pun. And the DFC projects that only one of Sony and Microsoft will be able to successfully compete with Nintendo if their new console launches by 2028. And 2028 was kind of the predicted year, as we normally get a new generation of consoles every 7 to 8 years, a little bit less than 10, just to kind of keep up with hardware and gaming demands. And in their report saying that there isn't room for more than 2 major console systems, and saying Sony or Microsoft will struggle mightily in a distant third place, largely depending on which of those companies can gain early momentum, which we definitely saw this in the previous generation with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, with the Xbox One lack of backwards compatibility and an inability to share games until massive community backlash, right? It just helped that PS4 generation just really soar above Xbox in that one. And it kind of showcased like a rough graph of what they expect to see the sales to look like, saying like in 2027, if the new consoles release, this is what it will basically look like. Essentially, the big blue bar being Nintendo, the medium one being Sony, and probably the lower one being Xbox, which kind of helps explain Xbox's recent trend of saying this is an Xbox and no more exclusivity. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this video. But of course, depending on multiple factors of which console will do better, right? If PlayStation decides to make a worse console than this generation, obviously Xbox has an opportunity to capitalize on that. So then there are multiple factors of saying like starting price points, the launch dates, and basic features and such portability will definitely factor in which console does better. But Sony does have an advantage over Xbox because Sony, first of all, started with PlayStation way before Xbox even got into the game. No pun intended again, but now I'm kind of happy about that one as well. But whenever Sony releases the PlayStation 6, they already have the advantage of a long, loyal fan base that has a larger number than Microsoft. And that Microsoft failed with the Series X and S, but has major acquisitions to become the world's largest software publisher. I think this graph that I have right here really showcases like the advantage PlayStation has over Xbox, and I think really shows why Xbox is really changing their strategy when it comes to gaming. And you can see right here, this is the graph of how they mapped out the sales of both PlayStation and Xbox. Again, we're not talking about Nintendo because they're in a league of their own. They're just making stupid amount of money. No one can really keep up with them. They're in a whole other league when it comes to making money off of gaming consoles right here. We can see like in 94 is when the original PlayStation launched, and it wasn't until 2001 when the Xbox was released, and that was just after the PlayStation 2, right? So there already is like this massive player base that is dedicated to the PlayStation just right off the rip, right? But hey, Xbox is new, people are interested in it. But this one really kind of surprised me about how much the Xbox 360 sold less compared to the PS3. From my experience being in the United States, that I thought the Xbox 360 was way more popular than PlayStation, but you also got to think worldwide sales, and that's a big factor, which we'll talk about a little bit later in here. But to kind of finish off the scrap, you can kind of see how this like Xbox has been in a really solid third place and has been a general trajectory of just ongoing improvement when it comes to PlayStation console sales, where Xbox, you kind of see that curve, it's kind of rounding off a little bit here at the end, right? It's the not looking too great for Xbox being a prominent player when it comes to the console generations. And well, Phil Spencer even admitted to this in an interview about a year ago with the Kind of Funny podcast guys. Phil Spencer bluntly talks about the position Microsoft and Xbox are in when it comes to the console sales. Like, don't take it from me, take it from the man himself.
We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and have, in certain cases, very, very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team. That's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform. But we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems, and their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs and every new generation was a clean slate and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think our big boy Phil is kind of like on the marker at that one, right? Like, especially with the physical media of gaming being basically taken away and now everything tied digitally, so it's now you're tied to your account. Having a clean slate with a new generation of consoles just really isn't a thing anymore. And this is why we see Xbox really pushing to be a publisher more than a console creator, which, you know, there's still a strong market for the Xbox, don't get me wrong. There's a place for it out there. But I just don't really see it really being a true contender compared to, say, Sony or Nintendo. And there is a little bit of a social element, right, where people want to get consoles because their friends have it so they can play with their friends. I mean, obviously it makes sense. And that's where another part where Xbox is really struggling. And this map here was posted by Forbes, so it has it's about a little old, about 3-year-old data, but it showcases the dominance that PlayStation has outside of North America. It's just clearly it's PlayStation all around. And like I said, with the digital platforms now where you can't really, you know, just have a clean slate of games, right? Like you can tell that, like, yeah, Microsoft needs to change their gaming platform and system or philosophy if they wanted to compete at all. And that's why we see them pushing this lack of exclusivity and trying just to merge everything together. Like, this is an Xbox, ha ha ha, and all that kind of stuff, right? Which I know some people are not too happy about that, but doesn't really bother me. If anything, I think it's a huge improvement when it comes to gaming accessibility and stuff like that. And Xbox even recently just put this out, saying that reportedly developing a cross-platform user interface. This also just kind of inspired by Battle.net, which Huh, I wonder where they got that idea from, you know? But saying that basically that Microsoft has been inspired by an in-game BattleNet social features seen in games like Hearthstone, Diablo 4, as well as World of Warcraft, which lets you share and communicate cross-platform. But I think this article is much more about like, this is an Xbox, right? Being able to play on any device, but have your progression saved across all different platforms. And reiterated by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, where he's talking about how they're rethinking their gaming strategies centered around allowing players to enjoy Xbox on all devices. And I understand that people who, say, invested money into the Xbox ecosystem, right, bought a Series S, bought a Series X, even if they wanted to upgrade from there, you know, they have all their different types of platforms you can enjoy gaming on. But I think this is just more just like the progression that we're going through when it comes to just gaming as a whole. We see the huge popularity of being able to play on the go, right? Especially with the Switch, right? Making a handheld, which you've heard rumors, and well, not rumors, but Microsoft has confirmed that they are working on a handheld. We'll see how popular that ends up becoming because, I mean, the handheld market's kind of taken up by a little company called Nintendo, as we talked about earlier. But I think this is going to be a huge step forward with a completely different philosophy of gaming that we haven't really seen before, right? Everything's been so exclusive to their platforms. You buy that game because it's on that console and kind of stuff. So it just really makes you wonder, like, how is this going to work out? This is something we haven't really seen before. It hasn't really been tested out in like large scale like this. But I mean, I'm excited for it, especially as a PC player myself. I'm excited what Xbox is doing, so they'll be able to just play whatever game Xbox decides to release on PC, and so I'm happy about that. And we're starting to see that with PlayStation as well, just because they know that they're stuck in third place and they need to be able to maintain more sales, and the best way to do that is by just branching out and giving the games out to people and not tying to just a singular platform. Saying games like Halo, for example, has been severely hindered by this exclusivity deal with Xbox, and saying like Halo's never got to reach its full potential and popularity because, well, one, because the development has been kind of shoddy with Halo the last few years, and also just being tied to the Xbox platform. They know that any game that they release, especially with the cost of the game, making those games, that's not changing. That's a universal thing. Like, games costing more is going to be the same on PlayStation as it is on Xbox, but Xbox is going to have a harder time recouping those costs if their games are exclusive. But do you think there's only room for one other console out there besides Nintendo? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you made it this far in the video, I hope I earned your like, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.